just the beginning glimpse of kind of where are you at in this journey in the hustle. And
Is how you get on the track of sustainability and success or ambition here.
the interesting irony there is that you will.
Good morning and welcome back to the Connected Mindset Live. I'm your host, Greg Tomczyk. Another beautiful day to be here with you guys. Adam Cruz, welcome to the show.
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you here and looking forward to diving into this very important topic. A lot of people in our audience, they talk about healing and they talk about, the grind hustle and putting pedal to the metal all the time and then healing. So I'm looking forward to diving into this to see what you've discovered throughout your journey to kind of find the blend between the two. And I know things aren't always a balance, but trying to find the right blend for the person listening in today. So where I like to start the show, just so the audience can get an opportunity to see who Adam is what mission are you on and what are you hoping that individual listening in today is able to walk away with?
Yeah, man, the mission I'm on is helping high achievers, ambitious people last for the long haul, for the journey. And I hope people walk away with just a little glimpse of how that's possible and the belief that it is possible for them. I think so much of it's like, can I do this? How am I sustainable? And just to know that you can. So that's what I hope people walk away with.
I love that. One of the things I was looking for early in my business, transitioning from athletics to working for other people and kind of seeing how business worked and how businesses grew, and then going to start my own, is I wanted to hear the downside, the darkness of building business so I could anticipate it. And what I realized is I would go talk to these people who've been in business 20 years. They were society's version of success or my version of success at the time. And they were stretched all over the place. And I would ask them, what was the hardest thing you've gone through in your business? And I realized that they had almost forgotten those hard pieces. They were just like, hiring people or, trying to make payroll, like things of that nature that we all know is part of business. And I think a lot of it that they were shielding themselves from was that internal journey of, were they feeling grounded? Like, were they feeling like they were not necessarily in control, but that they had the ability to grow their business while growing themselves without sacrificing one or the other? And that's one of the reasons I started this show, is I wanted to bring those stories to the world in a way that people were able to open up and at least give somebody a view into what it's really like to go through this process of being a high achiever and wanting to hustle, but realizing you don't have to sacrifice your entire life to do that.
Yeah, that's like the mystery of it, right? Because it's like, it's not the absence of hustle. Like, that's not a reality for guys like us. Like, I don't know if you're in Enneagram, but the Enneagram 3s, achievers, like, it's not the elimination of hustle. It's how do we do this in a way that we can actually last and sustain? And I find that, we obsess over the OKRs or the metrics, or as a baseball player, probably the performance metrics, the systems and routines to be the best in business or sports or whatever. But we often neglect that or ignore that in our own life. It's amazing mystery.
Yes, we do. It's coincidental. Our last episode was with a former Navy SEAL, and we were talking about resilience, and he looked at resilience as the ability to keep the energy even when things aren't going your way. And it's that same thing of, can you keep commitment and consistency when the world feels against you? And I think that's where you're hitting on here, is how do people last through the journey when we know our body and the world saying give up, and you need to shut down and go sleep for a week? Or we all know that feeling of, I just want to curl into a ball and put a blanket over me and turn off everything. But how do we, to him, it was just be a good teammate. So when he looked to the outside world and said, if I feel that and I can go serve somebody else, it's going to allow me to continue and them to continue as well. So I'm interested in your perspective on what does it look like to keep going, to last, to that energy.
It's interesting. I think my experience or my perspective on that has been the sense of pulling the sheet over and rolling over. Often it seems like it comes at the very end. Like, it comes we're so obsessed with launching and building and scaling, 10x this, 10x that. I say if you can launch, but you can't last, who cares? And so many of us are obsessed with actually the launching, and we'll spend 15, 20 years. And as mission driven people, the uniqueness about mission driven, right, is that we'll give everything. You sacrifice everything for the sake of the mission, and even yourself and the things that matter most. And so I find that the curling in a ball moment happens once you finally hit that probably some kind of wall that you can't last. This is not going to sustain. I cannot keep going like this. And there's a sense, I don't know what to change. I don't know how to stop. Like, this is all I know. All I know is go. All I know is build. And we'll sacrifice the things that matter most to launch. And it doesn't always mean that that what we're doing is wrong, though. Like, I think sometimes that's should I quit? Should I stop doing this? I think that what I found is that it's not the wrong what. Oftentimes it's the wrong why. And when you have the wrong why, it can lead to an unsustainable how. And that's when we get all jacked up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like how you put that. It's a lot of people think it's the wrong how or the wrong what. They're like, this business isn't meant for me because now it's hard.
Yes.
But it was meant for me when it was easy and I was making the logos and the websites. And
yes.
That's interesting. And I felt that as well throughout my career, as I was trying to serve everybody, and my why was to cyber secure the world or connect the world. And that was not a why that I could wake up to, because I realized that was outside of my sphere of reality. And when I focused on that one person that had traits that multiple people had, the why became bigger. And I woke up in a way where I knew if I curled up that I was impacting other people in a negative way versus just myself. And I think as business owners and executives, high achievers, it's like not that we feel sorry for ourselves, but we start to just see things through our own world. And I think that's where the teammate aspect really comes in for me, is the other people around me that I surround myself with.
Yeah, it's amazing in that journey. And I'd be curious in your journey of that, as you started surrounding yourself with people. I think so many founders, entrepreneurs, like, it's a lonely road, and we find ourselves in these various groups and we're surrounded by people all the time, but are we really actually known? Like, does somebody actually know why I'm really doing what I do? And I think sometimes if we're honest, for one, we're not honest because we're not honest until years down the road when we can't manage it. But that's part of the journey, is like, how do we actually understand why we're really doing what we're doing? But then the question is, like, who actually knows? Does anybody know, like, why I'm really doing what I do? Because if I'm honest, that's not necessarily coming from a good place. Maybe it starts from a pure place, or it starts from a good place. But motivation is an interesting thing because it's not necessarily intrinsic or extrinsic. I think that's a different conversation. For me, it's like, no, at your core, like, why do you actually do what you do? And it doesn't even mean the what so much. It's like, why do you need to be so significant? Why do you need to be so important? Why do you need to have so much power? Honestly, it's like money is not even the thing. Money just becomes the driver for these other things, these more important things like power and influence. And it's like, oh, why do I really serve the poor? Could it be that it's actually because I'm selfish? I'm trying to have some reputation. Anyways, very tough conversation to have with yourself, but it's once we can reframe our mindset around that, it can start to set us free from the need to perform. But we're performers, we're high achievers. That's what we do, So.
Yeah. No, I love that topic. That's something we haven't really hit on, and that's something I hit on in smaller groups, or like in my own therapy journey, is I have like a kind of like a life coach, and he does therapy as well. But we talk a lot about those types of things, is like, why are you doing that? What are you trying to heal, or what are you trying to address within yourself by doing that? And before I started to get to that level of both myself and the conversations with others, I just saw the initial thing. It's like, go serve the poor, it feels good, or go do this because that money will allow me to go on a vacation. It's like, it's not really the vacation, it's I just want a little bit of sense of release and freedom, or like things of that nature. How did you come to that realization? Because obviously you have to go through pain to come
Yeah.
to that. Like I call it the third or fourth order effect. When I was young in my career, I had a coach mentor say, when you look at this situation, what's the third or fourth order effect versus just what you're feeling now? And that was
Yeah.
a huge shift for me, but it's a very unique perspective to have.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of times unfortunately, pain is the only thing that like forces that conversation to the surface. But I think what I learned in my journey, I had a background as a pastor in ministry for 10 years, planted churches, and then I had a 10-year run in tech. And as I walked through some of the pain of nearly losing my marriage and nearly losing my family, trying to do good things, trying to build good things, I realized that when I'm facing the end of my life, the end of my family, that man, why I'm really actually doing this is because I'm trying to heal or prove myself somebody wrong. But my core motivation was that I was bad. And so every environment that I would walk into, I would prove that I was good because I believed that I was bad. When you take a high achiever with a belief system that he's bad and a mission to prove that he's good, do you think he's going to get good or bad? He's gonna be the best. And I'm not saying I'm the best in all these areas of my life, but the motivation becomes about I'll be the best. And the interesting irony there is that you will become the best.
Yeah.
And actually, it's the thing that you won't want. It's the thing that's gonna kill you, and it's the thing that's gonna take you out. I call it the ambition trap. Like, when we're at the beginning of our mission, our motivation's tiny, and we don't really have language for it. We're 25, 28, whatever. We're just driving, you're hungry, and you don't really have language for all this stuff, to your point earlier about pain. But what's interesting is then the mission grows, or the success grows, or the career grows, the sports success grow, the mission grows. We think the motivation stays small. But the reality is that motivation, that core driver, it's just growing. And so success will just make you a bigger whatever you already are. So if you're already driven by this internal lie that I'm not good and I need to prove that I am, well, when you're at the top and you're the CEO, or you're the pastor, or you're the leader of this massive thing that's grown, and this motivation has grown, it starts to create a world you don't want to be in. Lies, behavior, that compromising, all that kind of stuff, and just routines and rhythms, sickness, all the stuff. And then you're trapped, because it's like, nobody can know me. If you really knew who I was, you wouldn't like me, like all that stuff. And so you just ride it out. Sometimes I think about Lance Armstrong. I think when he first kind of came out, there was one of his first interviews, he said, I've never felt more free. It's like, it's finally over. Like the facade's over. Like I'm not pretending anymore. Yet he's losing all the things that he built. And so you don't have to, though, but we don't know how to get out of that trap.
Yeah, I can feel that in my nervous system, just like the freedom that feel when you go through those. I call them breakthroughs, but it's like when two things connect, it's like you connected with that you were bad and you were going after things because you felt you were bad, and you were trying, and you connected those two and said, what can I do to kind of explode those two in a way that allows me to go forward? And there's freedom in that breakthrough when those two things proverbially blow up. And but how do we get out of that? I guess that's probably the question that a lot of people are wondering is, I'm a high achiever. I know I have to keep grinding to hit this next, goal or revenue milestone, or, to grow my family to the next level, to get that new house, all the materialistic things that we connect to.
Yeah.
But we want that freedom so bad. And that freedom is probably what we are seeking in the end. Is we think that house is going to give us that feeling of those two, that breakthrough, or that freedom feeling of release. I think a lot of us just want release because we're so entrapped by the next thing, and that tightens us up.
Yeah, it tightens us up, and it's overwhelming. It robs us of our peace. And if you have no peace, then you have nothing.
Right.
And it's like, I think Rory's even said, like, peace is the new profit. Like, if you lose your peace in the pursuit of ambition, like, what are you really gaining? And it does take a reframe of what success looks like. And I think on our journey, the scariest moment for me was slowing down. And I don't mean slowing down. You could hear that a couple of ways. I don't mean like some version of like not doing anything or not being ambitious and not what my question for the last 10 years has been, is ambition and sustainability possible together? And I used to think of them on a spectrum. So on one side is ambition, on the other side is sustainability, and you choose. You get to choose. But then I realized, like, man, what is the relationship of ambition and sustainability together, and is it possible? And I found that a lot of times when your sustainability is low and your ambition is low, obviously that's probably not us or our audience, but it's like, that's pretty no direction. And when your sustainability is really high, but your ambition's low, that's going to look like comfort. You just got this like sustainable life, but your ambition is low. Most of us live out of a high degree of ambition and a very low degree of sustainability. And that looks like chaos and feels like chaos and feels like pressure and robs us of our peace. And so then I created this fourth quadrant. What does it look like to have a high degree of ambition and a high degree of sustainability? And I call it the healed hustle. And so it's like, what does it actually look like to take inventory, which is probably one of the scariest things. We do it in our business, though. We're not afraid of, like, we do OKRs on our OKRs. Are we measuring the right things? Are we even like looking at the right stuff? But we won't take the time to do that in our own life. That's one of the first steps that I felt. How do I get off the stage I'm on, doing what I'm doing, and actually take inventory? Because it feels like the end of your life. It feels like you're facing the end of a dream or the ambition. And I just find that we do not know how to like take the time to stop and slow down and take inventory.
So that's the first step for folks if they're listening in and saying, how do I figure out that balance between sustainability and ambition?
Yeah. And actually take inventory. What's working? I think I have 4 questions. What's working, what's broken, what's missing, and what is wrong. And so, when you can just do a quick assessment, you can, I have a lot of guys too, they're like, I want my wife to answer these. And your spouse or your partner or a kid or your, because we lie to ourselves, right? We'll answer those questions. I'm okay. And that's the great deception of a high achiever, is we think we can manage it all. I can manage the stress. I can manage the what it takes to be a hard worker. But you ask those around, it's interesting. You'll get often a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that's going to impact a lot of the transitioning athletes and military folks that listen in, because when you get out, you go on social media and you look at people who have been out of the sport or out of the service for 10 plus years. Maybe they're running a company, and you get this vision of what success is. It's working 12 hours a day, and you work out for an hour a day, and that is how you get on the track of sustainability and success or ambition here. But they never ask. And that was one of the things I was curious of initially, is going to ask the people that I saw success in, like, what's broken, what's wrong, like what's the worst thing that can happen here if I go start this company? Obviously, like bankruptcy and all these other things that pop up. But I think the worst possible thing is you look back, a year and say, I aged 10 years this year. Like my health is deteriorating. Like there's no sustainability in what I'm doing right now. And that was my biggest fear coming from an athletics, is I was spending 8 to 10 hours a day, like working on sustainability so I could perform for, 30 minutes to an hour.
Wow.
And it flipped where it was like perform.
Yep.
And then you kind of prepare and do the sustainability stuff for 30 minutes to an hour. So it completely flipped. And I felt like, kind of like a bump on a log, because I wasn't doing enough of the sustainability stuff. And then when I would get into those phases of like trying to find myself, I would just exercise for the whole day and work for an hour, and I'd be like, I'm not getting that ambition scratched, or I'm not achieving what I want in my business because I'm focused on sustainability. And I was looking in the environment of like, what are people doing sustainability wise? And I really couldn't find many people who were thinking about sustainability. They were waiting to rest and exercise once they achieved the sale or the exit or the
which never comes, or is always moving.
It is. Yeah.
It's always, there's always a gap between where you are and where you want to be, and you never achieve it. It's just always moving.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I often quote something, and it just resonates extremely with me right now. We said we would be happy when we achieved where we're at right now. And
Wow.
that for me was impactful, because throughout baseball, throughout my business, I was always like, I'll be happy when. And then when I got there, I never even recognized that I got there. It was just kept moving. And I was start a company. I was like, well, I should have taken a step back and say, wow, I took this huge plunge. Like, just take a minute to appreciate that I was able to go from dumb jock to baseball to reach something that very few people do, and then be able to start a company after that. I never really enjoyed that. And I think a lot of us need to take a second to pause and realize that those are the only moments that matter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, is the small moments that we do things to get to that core purpose. And for me, that was like the freedom to make the decision that I wanted to make, because I felt like baseball decisions were made for me, and things of that nature. So that was kind of a little bit of my healing journey. I'm still on it, and I think we're all still on it. But a lot of us seek the answer to get to that end goal, and I think that's what exhausts a lot of people.
That's fascinating you say that, because what I've learned is that high achievers and mission driven people and just Enneagram 3 type of people, we just want the course, graduate, move on. Like that's how we think. Our brain thinks like that, because again, like you're saying, we think in terms of these goals that we never hit. And so it's like, okay, cool. How do I heal my hustle? So, all right, take the course, do the thing, and move on. And I realize, like, oh, dude, I'm still on this journey, and I probably will be till I'm gone. And what I realized is it's actually a continuum, and it's learning to actually operate in a new rhythm, a new form of hustling, and in a way that you can take inventory, reframe your motivation and why you do what you do, make sure that you have the recharge routines in place, and have a clear vision of what I want in my life, and do I have the strategy in place to get that, and continually coming back to it. And I realized, like, man, this is not about graduation of anything. This is about a new way, a new practice in my days, my weeks, my months, and my years, as I hustle and build, that will help me last for the long haul.
How much of that do you think is identity, like individual identity, to say, I'm either not good enough or I'm too good to adopt a new way of doing things? Because I think that's something we were all pulled between, is the ego, and trying to figure out. I think that holds us back from adopting that new, I call it a rhythm of existence. I don't know if you've heard of Rob Dyrdek, Fantasy Factory, but he talks a lot about his rhythm of existence. And he's like, I've run the TV show, I've, built the family, I've built the house, and it's like I'm still trying to figure out what my next rhythm of existence. That's what keeps me excited about the journey, and the next step is, I feel like I'm going to have that continual release as I adopt that new rhythm, new cadence that you mentioned.
I think all of it has to do with identity. I think all of this comes down to identity. Again, so there's this idea that we all are living on mission, and we think that that's what it's all about, but we don't realize that there's actually a driver that's in the driver's seat of that mission. We don't learn that until we get some language around it. But, there's a belief system, and the belief system's actually driving why you do what you do. And that is what will influence how you show up in your mission. And then that's what determines whether or not you're sustainable. There's 4 concentric circles. Beliefs drive motivation for why. Why determines how you show up in your mission. And how you show up in your mission will determine if you're sustainable or not. So you realize, oh, this all comes from my belief system. So this all comes back to identity and who I believe that I am. And we're all trying to overcome, and I don't mean to make everything about trauma necessarily, even though a lot of us have that in our life. I think it's just more, whether it's, I think I'm the best, or I think I'm the worst, regardless, like it's the mindset of identity and who I think I am. You were mentioning about that goal. I was talking to a guy yesterday about a book called Gap and Gain, where most of us focus on where we are and where we want to be. That creates a gap. And the best people, or the ones that struggle with this the most, they just live in that perpetual gap. But the people that stay the most successful, they actually learn to look back. And that section from where I am and looking back is called the gain. What you were saying, like, oh my gosh, how far I've come. And when you live in that, it creates gratefulness. It doesn't create entitlement. It creates a sense of gratefulness for all that I've accomplished and lived out of, and who I have in my life, and the family, and what matters most.
Yeah, that's a breakthrough in itself, because it's so hard to look back, because we feel like we're regressing. We feel like
Yeah.
we're looking at the past too much, and good and bad, right? The trauma
Yeah.
and the positives and how far we've come. I I think a lot of people avoid the trauma piece, the dark side of it, but they don't even look at the good side of it. So they're just forgetting the past and saying, all I
Yeah.
can do is. It's interesting how they mention that as the game when you're able to look back, because that's where gratitude comes from. It's I woke up this morning and I was able to spend 5 minutes just looking out the window and drinking a glass of water, like being, present. But that's hard for high achievers to do that, because
Yeah.
we're trying to achieve. We have a high
Yeah.
sense of achievement, and when we get to that achievement, we get the release of the breakthrough.
Yeah. And all of our identity is tied to that
Yeah.
achievement. And so it gets jacked up for us, right? Because we can't just like live in the present. And I think for me, I just realized, man, my identity is attached to what I do. And that's when I knew I needed to resign, at least my first passionate career job that I had. And it's a scary feeling, but it's what you were talking about earlier. It's the freedom that's about to burst when you can disconnect your identity from our achievement, and just like your identity's got to be in something higher. It's got to be beyond us and my ability to perform. That cannot be the root of my identity, but for a lot of us it is.
I think a lot of people are also going to ask is, as leaders, like this is something I try to do on any team I'm on, whether it's baseball or my business. I try to be a leader that helps other people have the right healed hustle, per se. And
Yeah.
I'm always looked at as the leader that's too deep. Like, Greg, it's not that
Wow.
deep, or it's not that important for me to have the ability to sustain and to hustle. Like I just want to hit my KPI, my metric,
Yeah.
and then go, be with my family or whatever that is. And they look back at the end of 6 months or a year, and they're like, I never had the ability to hang out with my family because I was so focused on the KPI. And I was like, nobody told you that you had to be that focused on it. Like, it's on your own time, and trying to give that flexibility in the model for them to have those sustainability practices, but not telling them how to live their life. I think that's so important. And I've just seen as teams have grown, like I've, scaled companies for, being the fourth person to 85 in a couple years, and it just blows up because there's none of this intertwined into how people interact and engage. And it's almost like not everybody's against each other, but they're against themselves. So it's hard for them to be with the collective. And I think that it becomes pretty spiritual. And we try to look for things of that nature. But getting everybody on this same sheet of music is something I haven't seen very often, and it's something that I really try hard to do. Haven't perfected it, but just trying to feed that into people that I care about as I go through the journey, and finding obviously people that are open to it, to bring on my team. And I think that's hard for leaders today, is they see it and they may be doing it themselves, but then to find people around them or to intertwine it into others becomes even more difficult.
It's hard to find people that walk with a limp, and I look for them. I want to find people that walk with a limp, because it's like, man, you've been through some stuff, but you also have like overcome and you've come on the other side. People that don't walk with a limp, I go, man, your day's coming. And not as a just a negative, like pessimistic outlook. It's just that it's an honesty thing. And I agree with you, man. It's like I crave the conversation with guys that can get beyond the ego. They can melt the ego a little bit. They can melt the performance mindset that I have to be the best. Now, that doesn't mean you don't strive to be excellent and do things well. It's just that my ego and my identity aren't tied to that. That's what starts to allow the permission to even take an inventory on your life and even audit things. But it's funny that you say, that's too deep. I think that's like a protection mechanism, for us to not have to go there. Because I don't want to go there, dude. If I open that lid, I know what's under there and I don't want to look, and so it's not that deep, Greg.
Yeah. Those are the things I like, when I know that we're both somewhat uncomfortable, or we both uncertainty in the situation. I think that's where you're able to heal. That's where things come up and you're like, this happened in my childhood, or this happened in the past business I was in. I don't want to repeat that, but I'm not talking about it, because if I talk about it, I'll manifest it and it'll happen again. So.
Yeah. Or you'll know who I really am.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying. We put so much in our life to protect the perception that we have what it takes and I'm capable, because everything in us wants to know that we are capable and that we have what it takes. And so we will live our lives to make sure that that's true. And so yeah, I want to help guys unpack what's going on deeper and start to have language for that, so that they can actually last longer. And they can, as they're building and driving and working hard, like, I mean, some of the biggest leaders, their schedules are not less. They're not like, it's not like less ambition. It's just that the ones that last learn the rhythms of how to have a healed hustle. They learn the rhythms, how to take inventory, how to slow down, how to understand what the core drivers are, and then to make sure that they have the routines in their life that actually replenish them. And then a lot of times, like, I walk a lot of guys through a life plan, and the life plan has nothing to do with what you're going to achieve in your business. And you find that a lot of us have just never thought about it. We've only thought about success through the lens of some material outcome. But when you can learn to put language around like what it looks like to in 10 years and what you really want in your life and what peace looks like, you can set up a life that will get you there, and that make sure that your business is serving that and you're not serving your business. So, but it takes intentionality. You know that from your journey of probably becoming an amazing baseball player and the rhythms that you had to do. It's like, we understand intentionality, but we don't do that in our own lives.
Yeah, it's amazing you mentioned that. When I was in college, I lost a younger sibling, and I found something called Life Book, which is probably similar to your life plan. And I was a college baseball player at the time, so I was, in a pool of people that were all trying to go after the same goal of getting drafted and playing professionally. And they were all approaching it from, I want to go play professional baseball so that I can make, $500,000 and be, Albert Pujols, and, just be the person in the spotlight to get the recognition and the revenue. Like, they were looking at those two as the top things. And, I was able to go through that Life Book process and come up with a different impact metric of, being able to interact with the fans and build a network and be able to learn what lessons these people that were achieving these high things, have learned and what got them there. And that led me to reach the goal, but have a much longer term sustainable strategy for how I was going to leverage that for the future. And just that planning process of getting out of just the financial area of life and the business side, like you're saying, and think about what type of health do I want, what type of people do I want around me, like just these different things that should be in our life plan, because they're what really matter.
Yes.
It gives you the perspective I think people need to build sustainability, but still have the same ambition or even more ambition. For me, it was more ambition than the other people because that revenue and recognition, it felt good. But when they were, running the suicides and throwing up, they didn't need the revenue and recognition. They just wanted, peace and quiet. So
yeah,
it's interesting,
man. That's interesting. And I feel like for most of us, it's like, we get to this point later, many years down the road, when we look back and we go, I met a guy in the Bay Area when I was living out there who had sold 4 companies and done very well in his life, achieved sort of the what you're talking about, the revenue goals and all that. And I was asking him for some advice as we were young punks getting started building a tech company, and it's like, what advice do you have? And he said, man, Adam, just enjoy the journey. And I said, enjoy the journey? Why is that? And as your advice? And he said, I'm on my 4th marriage and my kids hate me. And he said, I'd give all that away to have them back. And I remember just saying, dude, write a book.
Yeah.
Like, we need to read that book of that story of what you like. I love how you started at the beginning of this conversation of like, I want to hear that story because I want to learn from that. And he's like, nobody would read that book. And I was frustrated because I was like, yeah, because we're reading the book of how to 10x your sales team and 10x your marketing and 10x your efficiencies, and 10x is better than 2x. And I get all of that. Like, all those things matter. But if you can't last in what actually matters the most, then what is success? And unfortunately, it's like in this guy's scenario, you learn it too late. And did you know that when I don't know if that, like, losing your sibling, was that like, it was that a shift for you and what mattered?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Cause what causes the shift in like, oh, I know what matters now.
Yeah. You're spot on. And it's amazing how those breakthroughs or the other things, like, the family, the kids. When those things are good, it's amazing how they will help you sell more, or they'll help
Yeah.
you like achieve more revenue, or achieve that piece. It's almost indirectly but directly. And I think that's where people don't really connect the two. Is superficially it feels good to be on the phone 24 hours a day and be,
Yeah.
selling,
Yeah.
and then, that mid long term impact is, you don't see your kids grow up. You don't, you and your spouse aren't communicating, which communication is a big part of a relationship. And it's just amazing when you flip those. I've noticed throughout my career, when I'm good with my spouse, when my kids are, my kids are young, but when I feel like I'm taking care of them,
Yeah.
I could spend 2 hours, and that probably equals 20 hours of the hours I used to spend, because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm doing this so I can go back, to enjoying time with them and feel at peace with the work that I put in and the focus I had. So
There's a book out. It's been a few years. It's been out probably even 10 years, but it's called Make Time, and it was written by the guys from that designed Gmail,
Really?
and I think he designed Gmail and maybe YouTube, but they were some of the early founders around some of those products, and they were talking about some interviews that they had done where they faced these similar things. They grinded for so long, they had a ton of success, and then you get to this massive burnout point at the end of it all, where you're completely fried, you have nothing left, and you're unhealthy in all aspects of your life. And somebody was asking, like, but isn't that the cost? Like, just isn't that what it takes to be great? And I think I'll be honest, I struggle with it, because it's like, you're a founder. It's like this founder's journey is a grind. There isn't any way around it. It's not easy. There's no secret. It's just the work and the mindset of showing up every day, doing the things you have to do. But I'll never forget the answer they gave to this interviewer, and there was something to the fact that, like, isn't this what it took, the cost it took to build this? And they said, I actually think it would be 5 to 10 times bigger had we slowed down and gone at a different pace. It would actually even be bigger than what it is. So you think this is success? Like, success is actually, the irony of it is, like, it comes from a place of replenishment and living out of that, not at the cost of that. And you actually go farther. So it's the great, like, deception that just more phone calls, more grind, more effort, just be busy. You meet anybody, how are you doing? Busy. I hate that phrase, because it's like, man, like, I don't think you're as effective as you think you are. And I think you could actually do more, but it's going to take an intentionality of investing in these things that matter most. And that's a cool story. It's like, whatever, maybe a romantic idea that you would have more, but what if it's less? But that's still a good life. Like, what matters most? So it's just like redefining what actually has meaning and matter. But the driver's seat's usually our identity until we heal that.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Whenever I hear busy, or whenever I get into that mindset of saying I'm busy, I feel like today I think distracted, because I know when I'm busy, I'm distracted. So when I hear other people say it, I'm like, what is distracting that person? Like, what are they distracted by? Maybe they're avoiding X, or so I hear that. And on the concept of it could have been 5 times bigger, I believe that, and that's something I want to explore more, is stories in history that people have done it that way, and maybe it got bigger. I think nobody talks about it. The only thing that's glorified is the Steve Jobs story, or these stories where people are working out of a garage, and their hair is all up, they're like not sleeping, they're pounding caffeine all day. Those are the glorified stories. So we by default think that's what we have to do, and we don't give ourselves the opportunity and the time and the space to do it a different way, because we get pushback from the world, we get resistance, and that's where we are like, I'm being lazy, now I need to go to the hardcore hustle piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And why? Like, why do we feel like we need to do that? I think that's where I realize, like, in myself, it's like, oh man, it's because I'm trying to earn something. I'm trying to prove something. And, Steve Jobs talks about, he felt like he got sick in his journey through building Pixar, and the stress that he was under from losing his role at Apple, and just this grind and prove everybody wrong. And then, he's got a lot of lines about regretting a lot of that, but we don't get to hear that story. Nobody writes that book. Nobody talks about that side of the hustle. And I want to help guys unlock that, tap into a different way that you can actually sustain for the long haul, build a life that actually has meaning and matters, and freaking kick butt, like do it, like make impact.
Yeah, it's hard not to romanticize the elder home repeated statement, or the person that's on their deathbed statement
Yeah.
of, I wish I would have done it differently. It's hard for us as humans to wrap our mind if people are saying that so often at the end. And Steve Jobs said, he said, I wish I would have done it differently.
Yep.
Because now I'm in this sick place where I'm, on my deathbed, and I could have done it differently. I could have done it differently. I could have done it differently. And we continue to hear that, but we continue to repeat.
Yeah.
And that's the definition of insanity, right? If we're not listening, if we're doing the same thing over and over again throughout history. And it's interesting that that's the journey you're on, to help people achieve that and find that balance as you continue to find it yourself. I think those are the best value propositions is, I want to help myself 5 years from now and what I'm going through, and you to join me on this journey. And that's why I got into cybersecurity. I had pain in it. I had a cyber attack, and I wanted to help other people avoid it. And that's what keeps me going. If I didn't have that, I would have been out of the industry a long time ago, because I would have just been, because cybersecurity, for a lot of people is money. It's like, oh, everybody needs it, so I can make a lot of money. For me, early on, I didn't attach it to revenue or recognition. I attached it to that pain and the breakthrough. And if I can get people to minimize the pain and increase the breakthroughs that they're having, that's success, and that brings all the other stuff along the way. And I hope people will take away from this episode just to question the way they're doing things, and think about if everybody on their deathbed, or most people on their deathbed, are saying, I wish I would have done it differently, and hustled, but found that, the balance with the family or the other things that I cared about, I would have been much more happy. And I'm saying that as as my last thought on this earth. I think I get shivers just thinking about that, because it's so impactful. If you had, five words left and you just said, I wish I did it, more smoothly and differently, it's just an amazing concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as we get it's just intentionality. And I find that it's not some secret. It's not like some mystery that's an intentional rhythm of how we operate in our days and our weeks, and that will make up our life. And so that's why I think taking inventory on those things is the beginning of how you actually start to have a different outcome. If you want a different life in a year from now, study the rhythms.
Yep, rhythms and patterns.
Yep.
Before we get to the final question, Adam, where can folks find you? I know you have some exercises on your website that people can take and kind of start the inventorying process. Where's the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, they can go to thehealedhustle.com, and we have an assessment you can actually take, and it's 35 questions, gives you just the beginning glimpse of kind of where are you at in this journey in the hustle, and start there. So yeah, go to thehealedhustle.com and take the assessment.
Yep, we'll put all that in the show notes. Adam, it's been an impactful conversation. One of the ways we like to wrap up the show, because we're all about connection and kind of connecting to that next breakthrough for people. What does connection mean to you in your life in today's time?
Connection for me is just about being present and learning the art and the value of just being in it. And, my son's a flag football player, 10 years old, so fun 4th grade flag football right now. And it's interesting. I look around at so many of these dads, because we're all insecure dads trying to live vicariously through our kids now in their sport journey. And we make our relationships with our kids about their performance. So all we're doing now is passing all of our crap, of our unhealed hustle, down to the next generation. And so our relationship, our connectedness to our kid now just becomes about, hey, I noticed that you dropped that pass, or, how do we, and it all comes from a good heart. Again, I'm not talking about bad dads. I'm just talking about dads that are like, I want my kid to be the best. And I've just made it this intention, and I'm not some saint and trying to pretend that I have this all figured out, but I only ask one question of my kid after his game. He had a game last night, and I just asked, did you have fun? Because if you're having fun, then that's all I care about. If you're not having fun, let's not do it. I just don't want my relationship with my son to be about his performance, or dropping that pass, or not catching that ball, or, all right, we're going home, we're catching 100 balls because you're going to do better next time. Like, did you have fun? Great. Let's go eat some pizza and enjoy the rest of the weekend, And just connection to me is like, I I tell him, I had a really good time tonight watching you. And I was like fully present. I just had a good time watching you. Whether you dropped something or caught something, it doesn't matter. I just enjoy watching you. And so I don't know, just trying to do that more in my life. Enjoy talking to Greg right now for the last hour. It's not about anything else other than just like hearing cool stories and being present in that with others. And I robbed myself of that for so long and made it about so many other things. And so that's what I enjoy about being connected.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely know that a lot of sports dads and me as a future sports dad will need that message time and time again. This is going to live on for them to listen into it and get your insights. Adam, thanks so much for being you, and looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.